Hey, Facebook. Happy, chilly, but very beautiful and sunny Thursday morning. I'm actually dressed today to go out for a run because I've learned that if I don't take that little hour in between various meetings to get out there and run, I'm probably not going to do it. So I'm pretty psyched to get out there, and I have various layers next to me to keep me warm while I do it. So the big news yesterday was that the governor awarded 24 grants for land conservancy, and 3 of them were in the northwest corner. Yay! That was really big news. I know I've been speaking to various land trusts in the area who have been advocating for that, and we've been pushing in various channels to get that done. So there were 3 grants. I'll describe more detail in the newsletter, but there's one in Cornwall, the Red Mountain or Galucci Preserve, which was sponsored by the Cornwall Conservation Trust, that will preserve 72.5 acres on Johnson Road in Cornwall. The second was in Salisbury, the Pope property. Thank you, Salisbury Association, for advocating that one. That will preserve almost 79 acres abutting the Appalachian Trail, which I know many of us have been paying attention to the Pope property, so that's fantastic news. And also, thirdly, in Sharon, the Dalton property, sponsored by the Sharon Land Trust, in which a little over 70 acres will be preserved on Westwood Roads in Sharon. So I'll describe the properties with more detail in the newsletter, but that was really great news coming from the governor's office. A couple other quick reminders. One, last week I think I reminded you, Access Health Connecticut extended open enrollment. So if you haven't taken care of that yet, you have through January 15th. There's an enrollment fair in Torrington. I'll provide information for that if you need some assistance getting that done. Also, an update on another announcement I've made in the past. The census is coming. It's really critically important for us, for everyone, to make sure we have every person living in this district counted. And they are hiring workers. And the news this week is that they're increasing the hourly wages for census workers. So now census takers will be paid $23 an hour. So again, in the newsletter, I'll provide information to apply for those jobs if that works for you. Then I just wanted to share, and I will share the details in the newsletter. I read that Connecticut recently ranked as among the top 10 states in the country to raise a family, and that certainly coheres with my experience. This is why we moved to this area, because my husband and I both grew up not in Connecticut, but in other rural areas, and this is exactly where we wanted to raise our kids. So that was nice to get that recognition. A couple of events that happened this week. As I mentioned, we had a bunch of caucus meetings getting ready for session, which begins on February 5th. So we had a fire and EMS caucus, and one of them was the fire and EMS caucus. And in particular, I've had conversations with many of you in the community about some challenges that arose out of some legislation from last session about mental health first aid training, which among the problems, we wrote legislation that had just a single place in Connecticut where a trainer could get trained for that. And there seems to be universal agreement, certainly amongst the advocates, but also amongst the legislators in that caucus and interested in that area, that that's something that we ought to be able to fix. And so stay tuned for attention to that, to try to clean that up and make that easier for EMS, who also have confirmed that they think, that they, in their experience, they know that mental health first aid training is critically important, but that the way that we went about this didn't really meet those ends, and so we can do better. So that was a good thing. We also had a rural caucus meeting earlier yesterday, I think, which we discussed pesticides, anaerobic digesters, and cage-free eggs. We heard from an executive from Hillendale Farms who was investing a lot in egg production in Connecticut, and they are investing in cage-free production in part because Massachusetts requires that. And so as they discuss, their marketplace is New England, and so they are very much moving in that direction. And so I actually look forward to visiting them at some point, because I think it's really interesting what they're doing to meet the demands of consumers who expect ethically raised food. So that was really interesting. And also a main conversation there was also about finding ways to push for anaerobic digesters, which serve just a whole plethora of needs, Prime amongst them, helping with both dairy farms and Hillendale Farms, for example, which, as you can imagine, when you're in animal management, there's a fair amount of manure that comes out of that. And helping those agricultural industries deal with that is critically important. It also helps if we can compost food waste coming from both institutional and residential sources and provide a way, a systematic way to address that. Also helps our towns. So that is a topic that we will stay on top of for sure. And this morning we had a meeting of the Northwest Chamber of Commerce Government Relations Committee where we were focusing on the agenda for the upcoming session. And they have a really robust and interesting agenda, and I'll describe more of it in the newsletter. But among the things we discussed is the importance of focusing on, business is not monolithic. So one of the things that I have been working on, as you know, is rural connectivity. That sometimes the incumbent providers, Eversource, can be antagonistic to that because their business model is set up in a different way. And I understand that. They're not evil because of that. But this is something that is very much in the interest of every other business in the area. So important to listen to the specific concerns of individual businesses in terms of what they need rather than just let one particular business be the tail that wags the dog. So that was a really good conversation this morning and great people participating in that. So upcoming events, I wanted to remind you again that Congresswoman Hayes's staff will be at the Scoville Library in Salisbury on the 15th from 1 to 4 with Casework on Your Corner to help with any challenges you have that are related to the federal government. And finally, I wanted to wish you a happy Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Today is Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. So anybody, if you come across some of our incredible state troopers who keep us safe and look after us in all manner of ways, thank them for what they do. They're really critical pieces of our community, and they're looking out. They see us at our worst, and they're still out there every day trying to take care of us. So thank you to all of you who are out doing that work. I have had long relationships with people in law enforcement my whole career, so I value those tremendously. So I'm going to put on my my hat, because it's cold, and go for a run. Have a great Thursday, everyone.